Bette Davis as Regina Giddens. In 1941, Bette Davis stunned audiences with her portrayal of Regina Giddens in William Wyler's adaptation of Lillian Hellman's play, The Little Foxes. Regina wasn't a villain in the traditional Hollywood sense. She was polished, poised, and terrifyingly indifferent. In a sequence that continues to provoke discussion, Regina watches silently as her husband suffers a fatal heart attack, refusing to lift a finger. She doesn't kill him outright, but her inaction makes her complicit. For audiences in the early 1940s, it was a jolt. Female characters were expected to heal, not harm. Davis's icy performance clashed with Wyler's reported preference for a more emotionally expressive approach. Cinema experts like Jeanine Basinger note that Davis insisted on playing the character with restraint, believing Regina's menace came from her stillness, not melodrama. Allegations persist that Wyler worried this would make Regina seem too inhuman, though no direct quote confirms it. The creative tension between them was well known, and some movie historians believe it added to the film's edge. Davis earned an Academy Award nomination for the role but lost to Joan Fontaine in Suspicion. Reviewers of the day, including those at The New York Times and Variety, praised her performance while acknowledging how deeply unsettling the character was. While there's no verified record of audience backlash in the form of letters, Regina's coldness clearly struck a nerve. Today, she's studied as an early example of the female antihero in American cinema, one who seizes power without remorse. In a studio era that often softened women, Davis made Regina razor-sharp. Judith Anderson as Mrs. Danvers. In 1940, Alfred Hitchcock unveiled one of Golden Age Hollywood's most chilling antagonists. Mrs. Danvers, the cold and calculating housekeeper in his adaptation of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. Played with unnerving precision by Judith Anderson, the character became synonymous with psychological manipulation and emotional control, qualities that made her one of the era's most despised screen figures. Anderson's performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress in 1941, a rare recognition for a character whose menace came not from violence but from quiet intimidation. Contemporaneous reviewers applauded her measured intensity, which some described as more terrifying than overt aggression. According to scholars of cinema, her portrayal helped establish the blueprint for the emotionally abusive female antagonist, a figure who weaponizes silence, loyalty, and obsession. Mrs. Danvers' fixation on the late Rebecca de Winter was steeped in ambiguity, fueling decades of speculation. Scholars have long debated whether her devotion hinted at repressed romantic desire, interpreting the character as an example of early queer coding in Hollywood. While never confirmed by Hitchcock or the studio, this reading persists, particularly given the constraints of the Hays Code that limited explicit representation. Uncorroborated whispers from the set imply Anderson maintained emotional distance from co-stars Joan Fontaine and Laurence Olivier, allegedly to preserve the character's icy demeanor. Some crew members claim she remained unnervingly still between takes, enhancing her on-screen presence, though no primary records confirm this as a deliberate technique. Adding to the character's mystique, legends tease that Hitchcock wanted Mrs. Danvers to appear visually tethered to Rebecca's memory. While Edith Head is sometimes misattributed as the costume designer, the film's actual credited designer, Irene, crafted Danvers' stark look, severe, dark, and echoing the portrait of Rebecca that looms over the film. Following Rebecca, Anderson was frequently cast in similarly intense roles, often as villains or morally ambiguous women. Though she expressed frustration with typecasting, she acknowledged the lasting impact of Mrs. Danvers, a character defined by her chilling loyalty and emotional control. Her legacy endures as a psychological villain who left audiences disturbed, not through action, but through presence. Angela Lansbury as Eleanor Iselin. In 1962, Angela Lansbury delivered one of the most unnerving performances of the era as Eleanor Iselin in The Manchurian Candidate. Cast as a mother who coolly manipulates her own son into becoming a political assassin, Lansbury's portrayal tapped directly into Cold War paranoia. The character's frosty composure and political scheming made her one of the most despised maternal figures in Golden Age cinema. Adding to the unease, Lansbury was only 3 years older than Lawrence Harvey, who played her son, an age gap that commentators of that period deemed disturbing, especially given their characters' startlingly close dynamic. Contemporary reviews praised her performance as brilliant and chilling, according to the New York Times' Bosley Crowther. Despite limited screen time, Lansbury earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, cementing the role's cultural impact. The film's eerie relevance became even more pronounced after President John F. Kennedy's assassination in November of 1963. Reportedly at Frank Sinatra's request, the film was withdrawn from circulation soon after. Some viewed the move as a gesture of respect. Others speculate it was due to the film's uncomfortable parallels with real-world events, though no official reason was ever confirmed. Over the decades, Eleanor Island's legacy has endured as a prototype for the manipulative matriarch in American film. Observers often trace a direct line from her to later power-driven female characters in political dramas. Lansbury, who later became a household name through Murder, She Wrote, acknowledged in interviews that she enjoyed playing complex villains, though a specific quote about this role remains unverified. Regardless, her performance as Eleanor Island remains a masterclass in cinematic menace. Erich von Stroheim as Max von Mayerling. In Billy Wilder's 1950 noir classic Sunset Boulevard, one character managed to unnerve audiences without ever raising his voice. Max von Mayerling, played by Erich von Stroheim, wasn't a villain in the typical sense, but his silent complicity made him impossible to forget. Max wasn't just Norma Desmond's butler, he was her former director, her ex-husband, and the architect of her fantasies. This revelation startled audiences in 1950, exposing a grim layer beneath Hollywood's glittering facade, the industry's readiness to uphold illusions at any cost. What made Max even more disquieting was how closely the role echoed von Stroheim's own fall from prominence. Once hailed as a visionary silent film director, von Stroheim had seen his 1924 epic Greed cut from 9 hours to just over 2 by MGM, an infamous instance of studio oversight that derailed his directing career. By the time Sunset Boulevard was released, he had become a remnant of a vanished era, cast in a role that seemed to mirror his own animosity toward the system that had cast him aside. Motion picture historian David Thompson later described the casting as like casting a ghost. Max orchestrates Norma's dream world with uncanny precision, writing her fan letters, directing her daily life, and shielding her from the outside as she slips deeper into delusion. His allegiance, far from admirable, comes across as chilling. Moviegoers didn't despise Max for his actions. They recoiled at what he symbolized, the silent accomplices behind fame's slow crumble. He emerged as one of the Golden Age's most softly reviled characters, not through open malevolence, but through his unsettling loyalty to illusion over truth. The role garnered von Stroheim an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor and briefly rekindled his career. Yet it also solidified a typecast. After Sunset Boulevard, he was largely confined to stern, authoritative characters, mirroring Max's icy detachment. Some critics have proposed that von Stroheim may have resented this late-career pigeonholing, yet he never formally addressed it. Folklore claims that Wilder deliberately cast him to blur the line between reality and fiction, a final nod to the unvarnished truth lurking behind the industry's most glamorous illusions. Lionel Barrymore as Mr. Potter. In the pantheon of Golden Age villains, Lionel Barrymore's depiction of Henry F. Potter in Frank Capra's 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life stands as a study in calculated callousness. Potter wasn't just the antagonist, he was a barbed reflection of post-depression indignation toward unchecked capitalism. As a wheelchair-bound banker who frigidly withholds an $8,000 sum that could salvage the protagonist's business, Potter's moral emptiness resonated nationwide. Publications of the era labeled him the embodiment of civic rot, while later retrospectives consistently rank him among cinema's most detested characters. What continues to confound viewers is his utter lack of reprimand. No arrest, no payback, just a final fade. Film scholars have long argued over whether this was a narrative oversight or an intentional critique of established impunity. Some even contend Potter's immunity underscores Capra's underlying message, about the American dream's vulnerability to corruption. Off-screen, Barrymore's real-life image contrasted sharply with his on-screen persona. Famous for his philanthropy and frequent charity broadcasts, he reportedly embraced the role of Potter as an opportunity to delve into the depths of human egotism. Despite grappling with severe arthritis during filming, Barrymore's vocal performance, sharp, clipped, and imposing, was so effective that Capra revised scenes to lessen his physical discomfort, placing greater emphasis on his cutting delivery. Some anecdotes indicate that Barrymore took pleasure in audiences' animosity for the character, viewing it as a sign of the role's power. Today, Mr. Potter remains a pop culture shorthand for corporate avarice, a cautionary model for antagonists who exploit systems rather than shatter them. Whether interpreted as a social commentary, a warning, or a provocative plot element, his place in cinema is indelible. Jean Tierney as Ellen Barrett. In 1945, Jean Tierney astonished audiences with her portrayal of Ellen Barrett in Leave Her to Heaven, a figure whose icy detachment cloaked a fierce obsession. Ellen calmly watches as her husband's disabled younger brother drowns, refusing to intervene. The moment, still unnerving decades afterward, shattered assumptions about how women were depicted on screen. Rather than lurking in the shadows like a standard noir villain, Ellen's cruelty unfolded in vibrant technicolor, framed by idyllic lakes and sunlit estates. That visual contrast only heightened the horror. Critics praised Tierney's understated performance, calling it mesmerizing and deeply disturbing. Film historian David Thompson later suggested that she portrayed Ellen not as unhinged, but as a woman whose devotion was so overpowering it became destructive. The Academy nominated Tierney for Best Actress in 1946, acknowledging a portrayal that challenged the period's conventions. Some film scholars argue the role reinvented the femme fatale archetype, poised, driven, and stealthily deadly. Whispers circulated that even studio executives were uneasy about the character's lack of redemption, fearing audiences would shun such a heartlessly manipulative female lead. But the risk paid off. Ellen Barrett emerged as one of the most subtly horrifying personalities of mid-century Hollywood, not just for what she did, but for how dispassionately she did it. Barbara Stanwyck as Leona Stevenson. In 1948's Sorry, Wrong Number, Barbara Stanwyck made a dramatic pivot from the sympathetic characters that had long defined her earlier career. As Leona Stevenson, a wealthy, bedridden woman who uncovers a murder plot during a phone call, Stanwyck delivered a chilling portrayal that divided audiences and reviewers alike. Leona wasn't helpless in the classic noir sense. She was manipulative, domineering, and emotionally merciless. She exploited her illness as a means to control those around her, while the New York Times described her as a woman whose nerves are as frayed as her moral compass. Other critics at the time remarked on how unusual it was to see a female lead depicted with such calculated viciousness, a jarring break from the era's conventional presentations of women in peril. Director Anatole Litvak embraced that unease. Nearly the entire film plays out within Leona's lavish Manhattan apartment, with the camera seldom leaving her side. Cinematographer Saul Polito's tight compositions and stark lighting heightened the claustrophobia, transforming the telephone, normally a lifeline, into a source of growing terror. Film historian Foster Hirsch referred to Litvak's style as weaponizing the telephone, though some documents suggest producer Hal Wallace may have pushed for that emphasis on isolation. Stanwyck received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, but the viewer response was far from unanimous. Some regarded Leona's outcome, bleak and inescapable, as overdue retribution. Others felt her downfall exposed a woman undone by the very authority she once clung to. Film scholar Jeanine Basinger later noted that Leona was a rare example of a female antihero who's neither redeemed nor forgiven, although the exact wording remains debated among researchers. Unlike the alluring femme fatales of noir, Leona didn't rely on seduction. She deployed her voice, her wealth, and her unwavering will. In a genre crowded with doomed men and perilous women, Stanwyck's Leona stood apart, commanding, frantic, and ultimately detested. Reports circulated that certain studio heads feared the role would tarnish Stanwyck's public persona, but the gamble succeeded. Leona Stevenson endures as one of the most notoriously despised figures of Hollywood's classic era, a woman who never left her bedroom yet left audiences rattled. Ray Milland as Don Burnham. In 1945, Don Burnham lurched onto the screen as one of the most disquieting figures of Tinseltown's golden era. Portrayed by Ray Milland in Billy Wilder's The Lost Weekend, Burnham wasn't a villain in the usual sense. He was something far more disturbing, a man enslaved by addiction, fabrication, and denial. At a time when Hollywood frequently glossed over substance abuse, this depiction was startlingly candid. Burnham deceives his brother, manipulates his girlfriend, and pawns his typewriter for another drink, dragging the audience through a weekend of ruin. In one unsettling scene, he hallucinates bats erupting from the walls, a surreal portrayal of withdrawal that shocked viewers unaccustomed to such blunt realism. While the film concludes with Burnham expressing a wish to recover, observers debated whether that final note implied redemption or merely another hollow vow. According to film historian Thomas Doherty, the production marked a turning point by refusing to glorify the tortured artist's stereotype. Behind the scenes, Wilder reportedly encountered opposition from liquor interests and studio executives concerned about the movie's effect on alcohol's reputation, though rumors of organized lobbying to prevent its release remain unproven. Still, the picture overcame obstacles to sweep the 1946 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor. Yet Burnham's legacy was divisive. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times deemed him pitiful, not praiseworthy. Some viewers empathized with his plight. Others saw a schemer exploiting illness to dodge accountability. That moral murkiness, unusual in an age of clear-cut heroes and villains, rendered Don Burnham one of the most disconcerting personalities of the era. Not despised for maliciousness, but for how disturbingly human he was. Rhoda Penmark as Patty McCormack. In 1956, Rhoda Penmark surfaced as one of the most disturbing fictional figures of Hollywood's mid-century. Appearing in the film adaptation of The Bad Seed, Rhoda, played with eerie skill by 11-year-old Patty McCormack, defied the era's vision of the ideal child. With blonde hair and impeccable manners, she concealed a chilling penchant for violence. The narrative, adapted from William March's novel and Maxwell Anderson's stage play, dared to propose that evil might be inherited rather than learned, a direct challenge to the post-war faith in nurture over nature. The film's central idea proved so provocative that the Production Code Administration intervened. Under its strict guidelines, no criminal could go unpunished. In the original story, Rhoda survives, but in the movie version, she's struck by lightning, a last-minute act of divine retribution designed to placate censors, not the audience. Film historian Thomas Doherty remarked, "The code demanded moral certainty, even if the tale did not." The controversy was immediate. Critics accused the film of subverting traditional assumptions about parenthood and childhood purity. Some even cautioned that it could undermine public confidence in the sanctity of family. McCormack's portrayal earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, making her one of the youngest nominees in Oscar history. Yet Rhoda's cosmic impact went beyond accolades. She became cultural shorthand for the notion that wickedness could present itself with a sweet smile in a school bag. Although not the earliest young antagonist in film, Rhoda was the first to secure mainstream attention as a psychologically layered and alarmingly believable child killer. Her impact was felt in later horror films, echoed in characters like Damien from The Omen and Esther from Orphan. Legends claim McCormack's performance was so convincing that some moviegoers avoided her in real life, uncertain where the actress ended and the character began, though no strong proof supports this notion. Still, in the tightly monitored moral sphere of 1950s Hollywood, Rhoda Penmark didn't simply disturb the public. She shattered the veneer of innocence itself. Kirk Douglas as Chuck Tatum. In 1951, Kirk Douglas broke away from his heroic screen persona with Chuck Tatum in Billy Wilder's Ace in the Hole, a character frequently cited as one of the most despised antiheroes of the studio era. Tatum, a disgraced reporter languishing in New Mexico, exploits a man's cave entrapment to jumpstart his career, steering the rescue mission and transforming a small-town crisis into a nationwide media event. The film drew unmistakable parallels to the real-life Floyd Collins case of 1925, in which Collins died after days trapped underground while a swarm of journalists and curiosity seekers hovered for over 2 weeks. Wilder reportedly drew from this case as a template, offering a stark critique of sensationalist reporting. Though often misinterpreted, Wilder voiced exasperation that audiences preferred upright protagonists over rogues, and Ace in the Hole presented none. Douglas later reflected that he wished to embody a man devoid of redeeming traits, just pure ambition. That drive, paired with Wilder's uncompromising script, proved too caustic for viewers at the time. The film performed poorly at the box office, despite appreciative reviews of Douglas's acting. Several film analysts now consider it years ahead of its era, a grim forecast of for-profit journalism. During its 70th anniversary in 2021, the production attracted renewed notice, with Tatum's tactics likened to contemporary clickbait practices. Rumors even claim Wilder clashed with the studio brass over the film's tone, allegedly refusing to tone down Tatum's role. While unsubstantiated, such anecdotes only strengthen the film's standing as a fierce, unyielding rebuke of media ethics, and Tatum's place among the industry's most loathed figures remains unshaken. Clifton Webb as Waldo Lydecker. In the 1944 noir landmark Laura, Clifton Webb's Waldo Lydecker appeared as one of the most unnerving adversaries of the classical film era. A cultured newspaper columnist wielding a razor-sharp intellect and an overblown ego, Lydecker wasn't merely manipulative, he was perilously fixated. Early in the movie he proclaims, "In my case, self-absorption is the only logical alternative," a pronouncement that analysts later singled out as a chilling blueprint of his warped worldview. Behind the polished facade lurked a man prepared to kill to maintain dominion. In a pivotal twist, Lydecker murders Diane Redfern, mistaking her for Laura, then later tries to murder Laura herself when she slips through his grasp. Unlike the era's usual antagonists, who tended to be coarse or overtly menacing, Waldo was polished, articulate, and unsettlingly composed. Webb, primarily known for his stage career and a handful of smaller film parts in the 1920s and 1930s, stunned audiences in this defining role, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Cinema historians, including David Thompson, have labeled Webb's performance as a prototype for the calculating sociopath, a villain who deployed charm as capably as brute force. A number of commentators from that period applauded the production's boldness in presenting a villain whose delicate manner and emotional intensity challenged mid-century norms of masculinity. Others found the blend of sophistication and cruelty deeply disconcerting. Anecdotes circulated, unconfirmed but persistent, that studio higher-ups initially balked at casting Webb, fearing his portrayal would be too refined for mainstream viewers. Whether viewed as revolutionary or terrifying, Waldo remains a singular character, a man who didn't just narrate the story, he endeavored to rewrite it in blood. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.